My name is Caroline Hart, and I built my cafe from scratch. One recipe, one customer, and one early morning at a time. For 15 years, it was my dream, my escape, my legacy. But apparently, to my husband and his brother, it was just a target. They thought I was too distracted by frosting and flour to notice what they were doing. They thought I'd never catch on. They thought I was too soft to fight back. But they were wrong. Dead wrong. Because the moment I heard my husband say, "She'll sign anything I put in front of her," I knew everything was about to change. What they didn't know was, I wasn't planning to save the cafe. I was planning to burn their entire plan to the ground and walk away smiling. This is the story of how I uncovered the ultimate betrayal and turned it into the ultimate revenge. I stood frozen just outside the office door, my breath caught in my throat. "She'll sign anything I put in front of her." Ethan's voice floated through the barely open crack. Derek laughed, low and smug. "She's so focused on those lattes and Instagram muffins, she doesn't even notice what's happening behind the counter. She still thinks I'm doing her a favor by handling the finances," Ethan added. "But by the time she realizes what we've done, it'll all be over. The cafe will be ours, legally." I pressed my back against the wall, heart pounding. So loudly I was convinced they'd hear it. The warmth of the cafe, the cozy smells of cinnamon and espresso, suddenly felt miles away. I wasn't in my place anymore. I was standing in enemy territory. For a few moments I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Then I stepped back, careful not to creak the old floorboards, and slipped out through the delivery door into the back alley. The air outside was damp and cool, the kind of Portland drizzle that clung to your skin like regret. I leaned against the brick wall behind the hearth and bloom, the cafe I had poured my entire life into, and felt my knees nearly buckle beneath me. My name is Caroline Hart. I'm 45 years old, and up until about 5 minutes ago, I thought I was the proud owner of the best little cafe in the heart of Portland. I'd spent 15 years building this place, this dream, with nothing but a rolling pin, a recipe book from my mom, and an iron will to make it work. Apparently, Ethan and Derek had other plans. I wrapped my arms around myself as I processed what I had just heard. The whispers, the smugness, the certainty that I'd never see it coming. My husband, the man who once held my hand as we picked out tile for the cafe's kitchen, was plotting with his brother to take it all away from me. How long had they been planning this? How many times had Ethan looked me in the eyes and told me everything was fine, only to walk into the office and scheme behind my back? My mind raced through the past year. Ethan had been pushing more paperwork toward me lately, refinancing, insurance updates, vague tax-saving strategies. He always made it sound urgent. "Just sign, babe, I already reviewed it, it's all standard." And I'd believed him. Why wouldn't I? We were married. We were partners. Or so I thought. I walked slowly around to the front of the cafe, keeping my head down. The soft glow from the windows, the chalkboard menu with its playful script, the clatter of ceramic mugs and gentle hum of conversation, it all looked so normal, so warm, so mine. Except now I wasn't sure if that was true anymore. Inside, our barista Maddie waved at me. I forced a smile and stepped behind the counter, like nothing had happened, but everything had changed. As I stood there pouring coffee for a regular, I caught a glimpse of Ethan and Derek through the office window. Heads together, smirking, planning. I turned away before they could look up. I needed answers. I needed to know how far this went. But most of all, I needed to stay quiet, at least for now. If they thought I was clueless, I'd keep it that way. Let them underestimate me. That night, I barely slept. Ethan climbed into bed beside me like everything was normal, kissed my shoulder, asked how my day was. I stared at the ceiling, my heart screaming inside my chest. I wanted to scream back. Instead, I whispered, "Busy, but good." He murmured something about a client meeting the next day. I told him good luck. I was living with a liar. And I was done being his fool. The next morning, while Ethan was out, I pulled out the folder where we kept our business records. Most of the documents were digital now, but I remembered he used to print backup copies. I dug through drawers, filing cabinets, even the boxes marked holiday decorations in the hall closet. That's where I found it, a manila envelope. With Ethan's handwriting on the front, Café 2023 updates. Inside were loan documents I didn't remember agreeing to. A refinancing agreement with triple the original amount. A corporate structure chart showing Hart and Bloom as a subsidiary of something called Blue Ridge Ventures LLC, a name I had never seen. But the worst? A draft proposal titled Post-Transition. Operations, Hart Brothers Café. It detailed a complete rebranding, new staff management, and my name nowhere on it. I dropped the papers on the kitchen counter and stared at them. My signature was on every page. Sloppy, rushed, and trusting. I had signed my own betrayal. When Ethan got home later that day, I was already composing a text to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Gloria Weston, my former accountant. I'd switched to Ethan's friend a few years ago when he claimed it'd simplify things. I had a hunch it was time to revisit that decision. "Hey, hun," Ethan said, breezing in with a bag of groceries. "Made your favorite. Chicken piccata tonight." I smiled tightly. "You're in a good mood. Just glad we're finally getting ahead, you know," he said. "Big things coming." "I bet there are." I excused myself, saying I had a headache and needed an early night. As soon as I was alone in the bedroom, I called Gloria. "I need your help," I whispered. "I think something's very wrong." "Come in tomorrow," she said without hesitation, "and bring everything you have." That was the moment I stopped feeling like a victim. I didn't know how yet. But I was going to turn this around. They wanted a takeover? They were about to get a war. Gloria's office smelled like old paper and trust. The kind of place where time seemed to slow down and numbers never lied. She greeted me with a long hug. No small talk, no judgment, just the silent understanding of someone who knew something was wrong before I even opened my mouth. We sat down in the back room where she pulled up her dual monitors and pushed a notepad toward me. "Start from the beginning," she said softly. So I did. When I finished, she didn't say anything right away. Just clicked a few tabs, adjusted her glasses, and then pulled up our business financials. The real ones. Not the cleaned up versions Ethan had been showing me. Then she turned the screen so I could see it. "That," she said, pointing to a line item labeled Operating Transfer, BRV Holdings LLC, "is not normal." I stared at the number. 6 figures. Gone. Ethan said it was a reinvestment, some tax strategy to reduce our quarterly liability, I whispered. Though even as I said it, I felt the lie unravel in my mouth. Gloria didn't flinch. "Caroline, this money didn't go to taxes. It went to a shell company, and I did some digging. BRV Holdings? That's owned by a trust with Derek's name on it." My stomach sank. She clicked to another document. "And here's the killer. This new loan, 3 times what the cafe is worth. You signed it, yes. But it was bundled with something else. A clause that puts full control of the business in the hands of the investor if you default. You've been set up to lose the cafe completely the moment one payment bounces." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "So what do I do? It's already happening." Gloria reached into her desk drawer and slid a card across to me. "You call this man, Marcus Kim. He's a financial forensics specialist and attorney. He's helped in cases like this before." I nodded slowly, clutching the card. The name felt heavy in my hand, like the first brick I'd throw in the direction of war. Before I continue the story, I want to take a second to connect with you. Yes, you, my incredible viewer. Where are you watching from right now? Drop the flag of your country in the comments below. I'd love to know where this story is reaching. And hey, if you're watching this alone, maybe with your headphones on or in the quiet corner of your room, let me remind you, you are not alone. Because at least right now, I'm here with you, telling this story together. Okay, let's get back to it. I called Marcus that same afternoon. His voice was calm, clipped, efficient. He didn't waste time with sympathy, just asked me to email him everything. By that evening, we were on a Zoom call, Gloria included. Marcus laid it out like a chessboard. Based on what I've reviewed, he said, your husband and brother-in-law are using a familiar but complex fraud pattern. They created artificial debt, moved funds through shell companies, and are now maneuvering to trigger a default that hands them the business. But the documents have my signature, I said, ashamed. They do, he replied. But you weren't acting with full knowledge. And if we can prove intent to defraud, especially with accomplices involved, the contracts can be challenged. But Caroline, we have to play this smart. No confrontations, no sudden moves. We need leverage, evidence. That's when he brought Rita into the call. Rita Levin, former FBI. Now a private investigator with a sharp wit, short hair, and eyes that didn't blink. These guys, she said, they think they're untouchable. But trust me, men like this always talk too much. We'll make them talk to the wrong person. She explained her plan. She'd pose as a potential investor, someone interested in acquiring the cafe or expanding with Ethan and Derek. She'd approach them through business channels they'd respect, flatter their egos, and get them to lay out their intentions. All while wired for sound. Meanwhile, Marcus would help me safeguard what was still mine. We opened new accounts, began gathering clean records, created a full inventory of all assets in the cafe. Everything from the espresso machine to the last spoon in the kitchen. Every invoice, every purchase, every scrap of proof that I had built the hearth and bloom with my bare hands. Back at home, I kept playing my role. The good wife, the clueless baker. The woman who didn't know how to read a balance sheet. Ethan didn't suspect a thing. In fact, one night over dinner, he smiled across the table and said, "You've really taken your foot off the gas lately. I think it's good for you." I nearly choked on my wine. "Maybe you're right," I replied. "It's nice letting someone else take the lead for a while." He grinned, completely unaware that I had already handed his betrayal to a woman who used to train undercover agents. Days passed like a storm cloud waiting to burst. Rita began feeding me updates. "They're sloppy," she said. "Ethan's desperate for a win. Derek's overconfident. They already trust me. Last night, Derek told me you'd be out of the picture by the end of the month. I asked her what that meant. Could be legal removal. Could be worse. We're keeping tabs." Then came the next twist. While organizing old files, I found something buried in our home filing cabinet, tucked between our car registration and a dog-eared IKEA receipt, a life insurance policy. On me. Signed 3 months ago. Beneficiary, Ethan Hart. I stared at the number. 7 figures. I couldn't breathe. I called Marcus. His voice was grave. "This changes everything. This could mean financial motive in the case of, well, anything. Happening to you. Caroline, you need to be extremely careful. Don't confront him. Don't change your patterns. And whatever you do, don't be alone with Derek." I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. This wasn't just about a cafe anymore. It was about survival. So I took a deep breath, looked around, the life I had built, and made a quiet, terrifying decision. If I was going to survive this, I wouldn't just fight back. I'd make sure they never saw it coming. Ethan had no idea that every night he kissed me goodnight, I was silently documenting the destruction of his plan. The morning after I found the life insurance policy, I sat in the cafe before sunrise, staring at the familiar pattern of light, filtering through the stained glass windows I'd chosen myself 15 years ago. The scent of fresh ground coffee used to bring me peace. Now, it smelled like war. Rita called just after 6 a.m. "I've got something," she said, her voice tight. "Ethan and Derek are planning to push you into a stress leave. They'll claim you've been erratic, overworked. Derek's already contacted a friend in city compliance. He's bribing a building inspector to cite fabricated code violations. They're trying to fast-track your removal." I felt a wave of nausea. "When?" "They want to trigger it within 2 weeks. Once the violations are filed, the loan documents they forged will allow the LLC to assume control under emergency provisions. And after that? They'll sell the cafe for a quick profit. The same one they promised to share with their investor, me." I gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. They were accelerating their plan. That meant I had to accelerate mine. Later that day, I met with Marcus in a quiet corner of a downtown law office. The walls were lined with books. Older than me, but his plan was cutting edge. "We have 2 priorities," he said. 1, safeguard your legal control of the cafe. 2, beat them to the punch with a sale they can't stop." "A sale?" I echoed. "To who?" He slid a card across the table. "Naomi Rivers, owner, Wildflower Collective Cafe chain. She's expanding," he said. "And she's been eyeing your location for a while. She respects your brand. With the right terms, she's willing to pay above market value, and she's agreed to retain your staff and keep your name on signature recipes." I stared at the card. Naomi had been my competitor for years, but unlike Derek, she played fair. More than that, she played smart. "If I sell," I said slowly, "I control the proceeds. And you rip the floor right out from under their scheme." The following afternoon, Naomi and I met in a quiet corner booth at Hearth and Bloom just after closing. We drank decaf, shared almond croissants, and negotiated like women who knew exactly what was at stake. "I admire what you've built, Caroline," she said. "This place has heart. I want to protect it, not strip it for parts." Her offer was better than I'd hoped for. $1 to $15 million all cash, with a 10% royalty on every recipe that kept my name attached. Staff would stay, the culture would remain, and most importantly, Ethan and Derek would get nothing. Marcus moved fast, drafting contracts with airtight non-disclosure terms. Rita stepped up surveillance. She placed legal listening devices in my office and cafe kitchen. Every conversation was cataloged, every document backed up and time-stamped. A week later, Rita called with a new twist, one I never saw coming. "Derek isn't just helping Ethan," she said. "He's blackmailing." "Him?" I blinked. "What?" Years ago, Ethan embezzled funds from elderly clients back when he worked in wealth management. Derek has proof. Emails, client statements, even audio recordings. He's using that to control Ethan. If Ethan backs out of the cafe scheme, Derek threatens to expose him. Suddenly it all made sense. Ethan's hesitations, his increased drinking, the flickers of guilt I'd seen and misread as stress. He wasn't just greedy. He was trapped. But that didn't change what he'd done to me. I wasn't his escape. I was his backup plan. That weekend, the building inspector showed up, exactly as predicted. His name was Martin Keller, and he bore a striking resemblance to the man in Rita's surveillance photo. He spent an hour nitpicking things that had passed inspection for years. He discovered minor cracks, moisture that didn't exist, and then handed me a preliminary notice with a smug smile. "I'd suggest you get ahead of this," he said. "Sometimes these reports get difficult." I smiled sweetly. "Oh, don't worry, I'm way ahead." That evening, Ethan came home later than usual. He tried to mask the tension in his voice, but I could feel it vibrating through every word. "There's something we need to talk about," he began, pouring himself a glass of scotch. I tilted my head. "Is everything okay?" "Just some financial transitions. Things are moving faster than I anticipated. Might be best if we sell the cafe. Cash out while the market's still good." I smiled like I hadn't already sealed the deal. "That's an interesting idea," I said. "Let me think about it." He looked relieved. "No rush. Just sleep on it." I didn't sleep that night. I organized documents, backed up files, and double-checked Marcus's closing timeline. The next morning, Rita texted me a message that made my breath catch. "We've got it. Full conversation. Ethan and Derek outlining the plan, bribery, intent to defraud, motive, and timeline. Recorded and secured." 2 days later, Naomi wired the full purchase amount to an escrow account under my name. I signed the closing documents with a pen that shook slightly in my hand. But when the final signature was done, I felt the first real peace I'd known in weeks. The Hearth and Bloom Café no longer belonged to me, but it sure as hell didn't belong to them either. That night, I packed a small suitcase and left Ethan a note on the kitchen table. "Staying with Patricia for a few days. Just need some time." He wouldn't suspect a thing. He thought I was still in the dark. He had no idea the spotlight was already on him, and the curtains were about to rise. The morning everything came crashing down was overcast, as if the sky itself knew what was coming. I arrived at Hearth and Bloom earlier than usual, just as the sun tried and failed to push through Portland's gray blanket. The air was sharp with tension, and the scent of endings. This was the day Ethan and Derek believed they would take everything from me. Instead, it was the day they would lose it all. Inside, Naomi's operations manager was already waiting with a clipboard, doing a final walkthrough. Marcus had arrived 15 minutes earlier with the closing folder in hand. Rita stood quietly, near the pastry counter, sipping coffee like a casual customer, her bag hiding a small recording device and a copy of the wire transfer confirmation. We were ready. Right on schedule, Derek swaggered through the front door like he owned the place. He was dressed better than usual, navy blazer, expensive watch, that smug grin glued to his face. He stopped in his tracks when he saw me standing behind the counter. "Well, well," he said. "Didn't expect you here so early." "I'm always here early on important days," I replied, my voice steady. His eyes darted to the operations manager and Marcus, then back to me. "Where's Ethan?" "On his way, I assume," I said with a pleasant smile. "You're not going to want to miss what happens next." 10 minutes later, Ethan walked in, flanked by a man I didn't recognize, likely their lawyer. He spotted Naomi's manager and frowned. Then his gaze landed on Marcus and lingered. "What's going on?" Ethan asked, trying to sound casual. "I could ask you the same thing," I said, "but let me save us all some time." I stepped out from behind the counter and stood in the center of the room. This cafe, Hearth and Bloom, was sold 3 days ago to Naomi Rivers. The funds are already in escrow. The sale is final today. Ethan's face paled. Derek's smirk vanished. The lawyer looked confused. "That's impossible," he said. "The business assets are encumbered. She doesn't have full control." Marcus opened his folder. "Actually, she does. And we have documentation proving that every loan, transfer, and forged signature you attempted is part of a fraudulent conspiracy. We've compiled evidence of bribery, attempted hostile takeover, and financial misconduct on both of your parts." Derek turned toward me, snarling. "You think you can get away with this?" "No," I said calmly. "I think you're the one who thought you'd get away with it." Rita stepped forward, holding a flash drive. "I have hours of recorded conversations between the two of you detailing your entire plan, including the bribes, including the threats, including the mention of a certain life insurance policy." Ethan flinched. "And in case you're thinking of denying it," she continued, These recordings have already been backed up and submitted to the district attorney's office. The door swung open again, and in walked Martin Keller, the bribed building inspector, holding a manila envelope. He froze at the sight of Rita. "I suggest you think very carefully before handing over that report," she said, her voice razor-sharp. "Because what you do next determines whether you'll be answering questions as a witness or as a defendant." Martin's eyes darted toward Derek, then to the security camera above the counter. Without a word, he turned and walked straight back out. "Coward. You've lost," I told Ethan, my voice low but firm. "You tried to erase me from my own legacy. You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I wouldn't fight. But you were wrong." He opened his mouth, but no words came. Derek was already backing away, his jaw clenched. "Oh, and one more thing," I added, turning to Ethan. "I've filed for divorce, effective immediately." The silence that followed was the kind you could taste. Heavy, final. The fallout was swift and merciless. With Rita's recordings, Marcus's documentation, and Keller's sudden change of heart, the district attorney launched a formal investigation within the week. Ethan and Derek were both charged with conspiracy to commit fraud. Ethan faced additional embezzlement charges when his old financial crimes surfaced. The life insurance policy, combined with the rest of their scheme, painted a picture so damning even their own lawyer distanced himself. The divorce moved faster than I'd imagined. The judge ruled that Ethan had no legal claim to the proceeds from the sale. Every asset under his name was frozen. He ended up with court-appointed representation and a mountain of legal debt. 6 months later, I stood in front of a charming little storefront in Berkeley, California, just a mile from Lily's university campus. She stood beside me, holding the keys with trembling hands. "You're really doing this," she said, tears in her eyes. "I am," I smiled. Meredith's Kitchen, a bakery and cooking school, smaller, simpler, and mine. "You named it. After Grandma," she whispered. "I did," I said, "because she taught me that recipes aren't just about food, they're about survival." We walked inside together, sunlight pouring through the windows, warming the hardwood floors and fresh painted walls. There were no shadows here, no ghosts, just clean space, a fresh start. The betrayal nearly broke me, but in its ashes, I found something stronger than revenge. I found myself, and this time, no one's taking that away. This story isn't just about betrayal, it's about strength, awakening, and taking back control. Caroline's journey reminds us that no matter how dark things get, we can always rise, fight back, and reclaim what's ours. Now I want to hear from you. Comment 2 if you liked the story. Comment 7 if you didn't. Either way, your voice matters. And if this story moved you, even just a little, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories every week. I'm here, sharing them with you, one story at a time.